Welcome to episode 14 of the Two and Tie podcast. Hey everybody, welcome again to another really fantastic episode of the Two and Tie podcast. Today I am joined by my co-host Poonam.
Hi there.
And today we're going to have another really cool episode for you guys. We're actually going to take this episode and move it outdoors. What I mean by that is, today our episode is going to be focusing on the backyard and the front yard, more specifically, seeding versus sodding and irrigation systems. So, one of the projects that we recently took on in our backyard was actually resodding our backyard. Now, when we actually bought our property, we spent a lot of time, the first couple of years, the first year or two really on the inside of the home, and we really didn't pay too much attention to the outside of the home. So last summer, our emphasis was really to focus on the outside of the house. And we're really torn between whether you should be seeding or sodding your home. And for us, it was kind of we ended up going with a specific route, which I'll talk about in a second. But let's first talk about some of the benefits between seeding and sodding your home. Now, for those who aren't aware of the terminology, sodding is basically taking those little grass patches and laying them down on your turf, so to speak, or on the dirt. And then seeding, on the other hand, would be actually what it is, and that it's laying out seed. Now, some of the benefits of sodding is you get an instant lawn. And what I mean by that is somebody else has already taken the time to actually fertilize some seed and some dirt and get some nice green grass out of that. And all you've really got to do is you've got to prep your backyard space and then lay the sod on top of that. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then the other option is to take, the dirt that you've got in your backyard and to lay seed on top of it. So let's talk about both options in terms of, so I've already said that sod is kind of instant, whereas seed takes a little bit of time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't prep work in both scenarios. So in a sodding scenario, what you've basically got to do is you've got to prep your ground. You've got to dig out any existing weeds, any existing grass area. You may want to rent a sod cutter and sort of take off any existing layers that are there. And what you want to do is you want to be in a position where you've just got dirt basically on top of your, in front of you essentially. Now, when you're going to sod something, you want to add in something like a starter fertilizer. And the starter fertilizer helps to cultivate the actual grass, and it helps it grow when you're going to put sod on top of it. And with sodding, it's very, very easy. You can YouTube a whole bunch of videos. I can actually put one in the show notes that I use myself. And you essentially basically lay down these little patches of grass, and you kind of build as you go. It's kind of like installing hardwood floors, except you don't need the machinery in this case. And then in terms of seeding, what you want to do is, again, you want to have a starter fertilizer, but then you want to put seed on top, and you want to kind of dig it into the ground so that you avoid birds coming out. Now, we were in a scenario where we had nothing there. It was just, weeds. It was partial grass, a little bit of grass, and a lot of dirt. So, Poonam, when you actually saw our initial property, I know one of the first things you said to me is we need to do something in the backyard. And we proceeded to go on the route of actually sodding the backyard. And now that it's been sodded, what is your impression of the process that it took, and as well as the end result?
So I totally thought that the process itself was going to take a lot longer and it was going to be a lot harder. But I was pretty impressed with how easy and fluid it went. And as the finished product, I'm really impressed with it because now we do have that little bit of yard for our dog, Snickers, to run around, and more importantly, our kids to have a little bit of a play area. So if we want to have, a little swimming sort of pool out there. We have the space now. And I just think that it makes it complete.
Yeah, and we had literally, like I said, dirt before. We decided to go the sodding route because we sometimes aren't very patient people, and we didn't want the seed to sort of, we didn't know how long the seed was going to take. And I'll talk about the seed actually in a second, because like I said, we opted to sod everything, and we did. And although sodding is a slightly more expensive alternative to seeding, for us, it was worth the investment because we wanted the results right away. And essentially with sodding, you've got to be very careful because you got to keep the joints very tight with one another. Otherwise, you're going to see dry spots, and it just becomes a pain in the butt to deal with later on. But ultimately, I mean, when it's a very simple process. I mean, to actually just you as long as you've prepped the ground and you've dug up any hard spots. So what you want to do is you want to get a tiller, and you can even get rotary, foot tillers that you just sort of push into the ground and you move back and forth, and you want to soften up the actual the dirt so that the roots actually have space to go down and they're not fighting rough spots and stuff like that. And that's actually the same thing with seeding. Whether you're going to seed or sod, you've got to soften your ground somehow, and a tiller is the best way to do that. And you can purchase a tiller from your local home improvement store for $20 to $30. Or you can opt to rent one of those big motorized ones. If you got a small yard, I don't recommend you do that. If you just buy the $20, $30 tiller, it'll be just fine. And you literally lay it down in patches. And like I said, I'll put up a video of a YouTube video that I actually used, and it worked out very, very well. Now, the other thing with whether you decide to seed or sod is you have to consistently water it. And they recommend that you water at least once a day. Now, because my wife and I both work, it's not very easy for us to, water it multiple times a day. So what I actually opted to do at the same time before I actually started laying down the sod was install an irrigation system. And I used a DIY kit from Rainbird. And I'll put the link of the actual product that I used. I think on Amazon it was about $125, $130. And it comes with a couple of it comes with a hose and a couple of actual sprinkler systems as well, pop-up sprinklers, and a timer as well. And the best thing with this is you can actually put it on a timer, so that whether you're seeding or sodding, it doesn't really matter. You can actually specify that I want it to go at 5:30 every morning, and I want it to spray for X number of minutes or what have you. And it does a really good job. And in all honesty, it took me maybe one afternoon to install it on my own. And the benefits are amazing. I don't have to worry about going out there and watering the sod. So again, one of the big successes of whether the seed or the sod actually fertilize and they actually grow in your yard is the amount of water. And at start, you're going to need to water at least once or twice a day at the very minimum for about 10 to 15 minutes. And after that, after a certain amount of time where it's actually started to grow on its own, you could probably scale that back to maybe every other day or every 2 days, to the point where you're actually going to get to maybe once a week. Again, it really depends on how much you water it, but I'm going to put the show notes for the Rainbird irrigation system in the show notes. And like I said, it took me about an afternoon to install. The instructions are very, very simple. And I've got about 8 different sprinkler heads that can shoot between 8 to 15 feet. So Rainbird actually provides in their instructions, they actually provide like a little sketch thing that you can sort of sketch out your lawn and sort of show and sort of have an idea of where the spots that you need to hit. So you can sort of pre-draw that, and then after that you can decide where you want to install it. So again, guys, it doesn't matter whether you decide to seed or sod. At the end of the day, there's going to be some prep work involved. Make sure you pick a good high quality fertilizer as well, a starter fertilizer in either scenario. And then about 4 to 6 weeks after the grass has actually come up, you want to then put in what they call lawn food, or it's a type of fertilizer, but more specifically, it's called lawn food. And that's really going to help the grass even grow more. And in order for you to actually get rid of weeds and to make sure they stay out of your lawn, you want to make sure that your lawn grows up thick. If you do get weeds, you can always apply a weed killer, something that is that's not going to kill your grass. We particularly use a product called Weed Be Gone, and I'll put a link in the show notes for that as well. and that does not destroy your grass. It only destroys the weeds. So it depends on where you are in the phase in terms of your backyard or your front yard, your grass. It's also a really good product. So, Poonam, I don't know. Did you have any final words for anybody in terms of deciding what they want to do with their lawn? More importantly, is this something that you recommend that people outsource, or do you think it's something that people can do on their own?
Yeah, that's what I was going to comment on. I think initially you and I had conversations about outsourcing it because I just thought that it was just going to be something that was entailing a lot more effort and work, and it just was beyond us. But my recommendation is that it is actually a DIY project. It doesn't take as long as you think it would. As long as, like you said earlier, as long as you have sort of laid out the ground and it's ready and, enriched enough to be able to grow from the sod, I really don't think that it should be anything that you need to outsource. You can save a lot of money just doing it on your own. And as long as you just are very, very meticulous about the amount of watering that you're doing, the grass will grow and it'll look amazing, just like our yard does.
Yeah. And guys, we love to do this, so we're going to do it one more time. We did get a quote before and after. So the sodding quote alone was about $650. We were able to do it for about $100. Now, here's where the kicker is. The installation of the irrigation system was about $1,100, and I was able to do it for under $200 myself. And it took, like I said, took me about an afternoon. I don't think an irrigation company would take any less or more time, to be honest with you. The process really where the time it takes the most is actually digging. And from the companies that came and sort of told us they weren't going to do anything different, the most of the charge was on the digging side. So this is one of those ones where it's not like you're going to save any time for outsourcing it. The only time you're going to save is not doing it on your own. So highly recommend that you actually do this project on your own. You can save a whole bunch of money. So hopefully this podcast helped you guys. Again, next week we'll have another really exciting topic. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys is I've been looking at some of the statistics for this podcast, and it looks like we're averaging a pretty decent amount of viewership per week. Actually, almost about 1,000 people per week, which is not that bad given that we've only sort of hit episode 14 and we're once a week. The other thing I'd kindly ask you to do is, if you haven't already, it helps us a lot, gives us a lot of encouragement to go onto iTunes and leave us a rating, leave us an honest rating. If there's something that you think we can do better, shoot me an email at satsandtoolandtie.com. Otherwise, guys, stay safe, stay happy, and stay productive, and I'll talk to you next week.